Fall Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm John Buhler, staff writer, fansite.com. I'm joined today by a man who doesn't want to be about them Dallas Cowboys, but will be about them Dallas Cowboys when he comes on the Blog and Dirty podcast on a Wednesday to help me preview Falcons Cowboys. Cody Williams, content director, fansite.com. How are you?
Brother, let me just go and tell you, the Dallas Cowboys had Dalvin Cook as a featured part of their running game in the year of our Lord 2024. I'm not doing great. Like, it's quite like Dalvin Cook in the year 2024 is indicative of what Florida State is this year. So it's quite fitting. Like, he's just not useful. He shouldn't be there. He's terrible. I had a bad time last night, but I'm okay. I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Still kind of got my head in the clouds right now, coming off of PTO. Need to kind of get right here. This is a good primer for that before I start cranking out content. Doing a lot better than that security officer down in Tampa, Florida, who broke his ankle.
Yeah, big ups to that guy. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Let me sign your cast.
Yes, just I'm gonna put X on there. Play tic-tac-toe in his cast.
That's right. It's the only way.
It's the only way. And it's also the only way to start Monday's show off with first and 15 from Ward Manual's manual. Yes, we are going to look at the AP top 25, kind of see prevailing thoughts. We'll get into our brackets, a couple more things, and then obviously we'll get out of here with some pour one out and bowling.
Oh yeah.
It gets in my head. I don't know if it's four or five, but I got to make sure. I got to channel my inner Fred Durst. So I put a backwards Cardinals hat on, but I hate the Cardinals. I'm never going to do that. This is fall starts.
Don't tarnish your beautiful dome quite like that.
No, it'll fall out. But anyway, looking at the AP top 25, I have two bones to pick. I mean, and I didn't do the write-up for this. Chris Klein did a fantastic job filling in for me, and we are reaping the benefits from traffic accordingly, per usual. Um, this will probably be reflected in my 12-team bracket, but I'm just not seeing it with Tennessee. I know they didn't play, but at the same time, I'm like, it just seems like they're the odd one out looking at the top 10. Everybody else, I've kind of feel like I think they could score 40 points. And I don't think
Mhm.
Tennessee could score 30 points if they're playing anybody not named North Carolina State.
Yeah, I mean, like any Power Four team, like yeah, I'm sure there's some MAC teams that, based on what I've seen from the MAC, they could hang a big number on. But like it is not great right now with Tennessee. I'm definitely with you. Like it's hard to penalize a team that did not play today or play this weekend, but like I don't know. How is Indiana? How is BYU? How is Iowa State behind Tennessee at this point? Those are no loss teams, and like at this point in the season, when you're 7-0, 8-0, like I'm like that's the time of the season where you have to kind of start taking a little bit of strength of record out of it. Like I understand that Indiana's schedule's not been ridiculous, neither is BYU's, neither is Iowa State's, but at the same time, you're 8-0. There's not many teams that have been able to accomplish that to this point.
And
You
then
should
it's
be
this
ranked in the top 10 pretty easily.
for sure. Absolutely. And then on the counter, it's like they docked Clemson two spots for not playing. And I'm like, they have the same record as Tennessee. They both love orange for some reason, and I like the Tigers more.
I mean, yeah,
Shockingly.
so I will say for your mental health, like that's going to even itself out when Tennessee gets boat raced by Georgia because Georgia has the ability to score points that Tennessee does not, especially against this Georgia defense. So like I the beautiful thing about college football is most of this stuff does even out in the wash unless you're Florida State last year, in which case it does not. But regardless, like especially the 12-team playoff era, like I think it's going to go out in the wash. Can I get on my soapbox real quick? It's at the bottom of the top 25, but I'm going to lose my mind.
That was my other one too. You go right ahead, brother.
How the hell are the Missouri Tigers still the 25th best team in the country? What are we doing here? You have Vanderbilt, Memphis, Tulane, Navy, Louisville, UNLV, Arkansas, Louisiana Lafayette, and South Carolina also receiving votes. I would take all of those teams over Missouri right now. They all have been better than Missouri this season. What in the hell are we doing? They like you lost like it's not even like they played Alabama close. You lost 34 to nothing. Nothing. And like you're still in the top 25. Get out of here with that nonsense.
I mean, it's just like instead of trimming Bam in Nagasaki, he's just Bam in Columbia.
Dude, unbelievable.
Yes, that's more egregious than like a couple of weeks ago when Michigan was like 24. It was
Yeah.
there's no reason, but like I mean you're relying on what 60 to 63 people making this poll up. Like, is there any of those teams that got a vote that you're like, I'm definitely putting them in? Like, I would want to put Vanderbilt in there. I don't know if I could. It would probably be Memphis for me.
Yeah, Memphis in the AP Top 25 projections I did on Saturday night. I had Memphis in the poll at 25 because I think actually I apologize. I think I had them at 24 and Illinois at 25. Regardless, Memphis is 7-1. I don't think Memphis is some world beater. They did lose to Navy. That's their one loss on the year. But like I do think that Memphis at 7-1 has been a good enough team to deserve being ranked, as opposed to Missouri, who literally like their biggest quality win is Vanderbilt. It was in overtime, but like I can't say that Missouri has looked good in any game that they played this season, particularly the two biggest games that they played on their schedule where they got boat raced by both Texas A&M and Alabama.
You look at Vanderbilt since that game, the Doors have played well in every game up to that or after that point. I mean, they nearly beat Texas like in a
Hmm.
game that like things weren't just going great for Vandy. They kind of found a way to make it really competitive. That's what good teams do. Even if you don't have
Right.
it, they just don't have the horses. But even with Memphis, it's like you're at the point of the season, they're 7-1. Their one loss is to like Navy in conference
Hmm.
play. Like they're still very much alive to win the group of five. If Boise slips up, they're pretty much right there with the Wazoos of the world. Although I can't quite figure it out with them. Like, would they even get in like without a conference championship? It's such a weird time to have a great season for Wazoo.
Yeah, I actually don't know. That's something we should probably know and probably look up and maybe write something about for the site. But yeah, I don't know what would happen. I feel like my understanding is right now they would have to get in that large. Like I don't they're not eligible for the Mountain West title if I'm not mistaken.
No,
I don't know how they get in. I think again this will probably even itself out in the watch. I was watching the end of that Wazoo San Diego State game last on Saturday night, and Wazoo is good. They're definitely not 7-1 good. Like it's a little paper tiger out there for the Cougs. Great season, way to handle a lot of adversity coming into this year. Adversity that Oregon State has obviously not handled well. But after losing Cam Ward, this is what you're looking like. So, a lot of impressive things from Wazoo, but I would imagine they probably end up as a 2 or 3 loss team when it's all said and done.
that makes sense. And hopefully they pay Jake Dickert or someone does because his buyout's like six figures. Like you can get the dude
Yeah.
for
You
come
and
on
I could
down.
probably get a GoFundMe to get it ready. Like get him to come coach false start.
You go crowdsource like, okay, you want to empty out your 401k and your IRAs for this? You want to buy out Jake Dickert?
Yeah.
uh my retirement is this coach, and we're gonna get kickbacks here. But I'm trying to think if there's any other things on here that really stand out. I don't know why I still feel LSU's a little high at 16, even though they dropped 8 spots, just because I kind of felt it was high to begin with. I don't know. Pitt's, I'm still really impressed with what Pitt did to Syracuse. I think they're a little low.
Yeah, I think Pitt should probably be above both LSU and K-State. Like K-State went down on the wire with a pretty bad Kansas team this week,
Yeah.
and they dropped a spot, sure, but like you have an undefeated Pitt sitting behind them. Like I think Pitt's got to move up in this poll. The other thing I like on a positive note, so I'm not just completely negative, like it's about time that Colorado got ranked.
Yeah.
Like I honestly looking at the poll and looking at what Colorado's done, the more I thought about it, the more I got surprised they weren't already. But it's good to see them ranked. I felt like that game against Cincinnati was kind of winner gets ranked, especially based on what we saw at the bottom of the top 25 last or on Saturday. So I think that Colorado, now sitting at 6-2, and again, still very much alive for this Big 12 title race, which we will talk about in a second. But like they only have one loss. They have an easy strength of schedule down the stretch. Like it's absolutely doable for them to get to the Big 12 title game.
They're going to need K-State to lose for Armageddon, basically.
Which
It's totally,
K State almost lost the Sunflower Showdown, so
yeah.
like K State can lose to anybody.
Ema, man. Every man will win.
That's
I don't
right.
know. I don't know, but I was gonna say something else. Thank God election season's almost over.
Dude, unbelievable.
I feel like I get dumber every time I watch a commercial, but I get smarter every time we do playoffs. You kidding me?
That's right.
How did you have an easy time doing this, or was it more difficult for you? It was rounding up the top. I feel like I wanted more teams in there. That was kind of my issue this week.
I wanted fewer teams, frankly. But I think we ended up on the same issue. Like I think the top nine, I settled into pretty easily. Then I
Yeah,
got to 10, 11, or I guess, sorry, the four at large bid or the five at large bids, and then the 5 through 8 seeds. And then 9, 10, and 11 is where I really struggled. I didn't know what to do
yes.
with those, where to come down with those. And then obviously that makes the first four out there. But like, I think that 9 through 11 and then those first four out, they're almost interchangeable to me at this point.
It's pretty close. So I'll rattle off. I don't know what's going on with my voice today. I can't talk today. You treat your body like a tent and it fails you. It's great.
That's right. A tent in the windstorm, baby.
I mean, that's the Cameron craze. That's why they're crazy.
That's right.
So I'll rattle off my first four and then 12. So I've got Oregon as my projected Big Ten champion at one. Georgia at two as my projected SEC champion. Three, I've got Clemson as my projected ACC. And I went to BYU at four, projected to win the Big 12. Finally giving the Cougs some love. And then I've got Boise State as my 12, winning the Group of Five Mountain West.
We have the exact same in the five auto bids. Like I just don't at this point, I think the only thing you could possibly quibble with would be, well, Miami's still undefeated. So why is Clemson your ACC championship, ACC champion? Because they're a better football team, quite frankly, right now. Like I just have a lot more faith in Clemson than I do Miami right
Yeah, that's kind of my thought there as well. Like the debate between Clemson and Miami seems to be a little bit stronger than the debate between BYU and Iowa State, who has Iowa State's kind of playing with fire of like they
now.
might get beat here, they might not. Maybe they're building adversity or whatever, but like BYU's just won more convincingly the last couple of weeks. So I figured that they're a more likely entry. I mean, they're ranked above them in the AP top 25 by a few spots. I feel
Yeah.
that's justified.
Yeah. I'm very much following the AP top 25's voters with having BYU over there. Like I see a better team when I watch BYU than I do Iowa State. I see a more consistent team. I see a team that can win in more ways. And so the fact that BYU also has the edge in the AP top 25, that's going to give them the edge in my playoff rankings.
Feel that? Who do you have at five?
Texas. I still have Texas there.
Same.
And like I we didn't talk about it in the AP top 25, but Texas beat a good Vanderbilt team on the road. And like yes, it was only 3 points on the final box score, but like Diego Pavia scored a late touchdown and then they had an onside kick and Texas recovered it. Like it wasn't as close as 3 points might make it seem. And like again, it's a good Vanderbilt team. This is a Vanderbilt team that took Missouri to the wire, who if you still think they're a top 25 team, apparently voters, like they took a top 25 team to overtime. Probably should have won that game if not for a missed kick. They beat Alabama. They just straight up beat Alabama. And Texas, played them close, but still got the win despite not playing that well. That's still the fifth ranked team in the meet, especially if you're going to have Miami jumping ahead of them, who, yeah, sure, they won with margin, but it wasn't an impressive effort against Florida State.
I would say like I can understand the AP poll doing that. Like I'm not like pulling my hair out over like something ridiculous. Like I get it. I wouldn't have voted that way, but if that's the way
Yeah.
that it goes out, I'm like I can accept that. I don't agree with it.
I can accept it. I have reached the acceptance phase.
Yeah.
It's still dumb, but I've accepted it.
Yeah, you can't wait till you see where I have Miami on this list. But who do you have at six? Because I have Texas at five as well.
I have Ohio State at 6, and the reason is twofold, just kind of projecting out the schedule. I said on Saturday night that I'm talking myself more into Indiana beating Ohio State, but I'm not all the way there yet. I just can't quite get myself to the point where Ohio State's talent doesn't prevail in that game. Maybe I get there by, in a couple weeks when they play that game, but right now I'm not there. And on top of that, you throw in the Drew Lar injury, and that's advantage Ohio State pretty bigly in that one. So like I do think that like Ohio State things are breaking right for them to be like the second fiddle in the Big Ten.
I've got them switched than you. I've got Penn State at six and Ohio State at seven. That's
Okay.
kind of where my head's at. At this point, I'm still going to reward Penn State for being undefeated this late in the season. in a Power Two conference, even though like I know how the hammer and nail rivalry works. I'm probably
Yeah,
gonna reflect that they're in Jalen on Thursday. Sneak peek, sneak peek there. But it's just I feel like the coaching is just better at Penn State, but the talent's
mhm.
probably better at Ohio State, and we'll see how that shakes out here very soon.
Very soon, very, very soon. So at 7, I don't have Penn State. At 7, I have Notre Dame.
Okay.
And it's kind of what we talked about on Saturday night again. Like, I don't see the path to Notre Dame taking another loss, especially with the way they're playing right now. I don't really see that happening. Again, the Texas A&M win continues to look better and better based on what Texas A&M is doing right now. So like that's only going to boost their resume further. And the fact that they don't have to play a conference championship game may actually work in their favor as they go 11-1. Like that's going to work in their favor. They don't have the danger of taking another loss. And so like as the Big Ten, as these Big Ten contenders for the play to make the playoff beat up on one another, I think Notre Dame is the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, they still got to play Army, and then USC is going to try to play their Super Bowl to fight for a bowl game.
Yeah.
They won. They beat a really bad Rutgers team. Apparently, Carmageddon and Carmageddon are like happened the same weekend. It was wild.
Of course, of course.
I was about to set up this really awful tweet if Freddie Freeman didn't go yard. Shout out to everybody in LA wanting to get Veneers now.
Yeah, shouts to, I mean, I can't be mad at the World Series right now because
No, no.
Yankees lose.
Yes. I mean, I just want to have like the one Mickey Mouse championship in LA. So I mean, it's not particularly great for me, but
No.
whatever. It's like I was telling the Arizona State podcast who pulls for the Yankees and the Diamondbacks and the Braves. That's kind of like what she does and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I think the winner of the World Series is gonna fire their manager.
Oh,
They both
100%. It's terrible, dude. Like, nothing brings me joy though. Excuse me, like on the Fox post game when they're trying to talk baseball immediately when they go on after the game and David Ortiz is just sitting there yelling, "Duh, Yankees lose." It's my favorite thing in the
and
world.
then A-Rod and Jeter are just looking at each other, just like, I love this guy, but I hate this guy. That's good.
We can't say anything to him. He will destroy us.
Shout out to A-Rod and Jeets being boys. Just
That's right.
but yeah, I have Notre Dame at 8. So
Okay.
I've got them right there. It's they're gonna be I don't see any way that they're gonna be any worse than 10-2, and their 10-2 is compelling enough to get in, is basically what I've
Yeah.
arrived at.
No, 100%. And so this goes to my point where you were, before we started unveiling our current brackets and rankings, like I have Penn State at 8. So like we have the same 8 teams in the top 8 and then the same 12 seed as well. So like those 9 teams seem pretty set in there and like in the same range. But now is when we get a little bit of I'm supposing some disagreement.
Potentially. This was very hard to figure out these last three in here. At number 9, I have Texas A&M.
Okay.
I feel that like we'll talk about this in the penultimate topic here. That's probably Texas A&M's best win since they joined the SEC. That is everything that everybody ever wanted. Tech. I mean, yes, they beat Alabama, but it's like Arkansas doing cartwheels in the streets when they're like 8-4 and they beat Texas. Like it's their one
Mhm.
win. I'm like no, this is substantial. This is a program altering type of win for LSU. You beat a hated rival. You made a tough change to change your quarterback out there, and you went out there and you're basically like, unless I mean, you can afford a loss to Texas, you're going to make the playoff at this point. Like
Mhm.
it's whereas LSU they got to beat Bama. That's a playoff elimination game here in 2 weeks. It's I felt very comfortably because and again I've been higher on A&M than you for a while now, but like I kind of felt that like if I'm going to put Notre Dame at 8, there's not much separation there other than that game. That's why I've got them at 9.
So I also have Texas A&M at 9. And you're right. You have been higher on them than me, but like what I saw from Marcel Reed changed a lot of opinions because like one of my big things going into the LSU game, why I was picking LSU is I didn't know Mike Elko had the stones to do that, but I did think Connor Wegman was going to look like what Connor Wegman looked like in that game before he got pulled. So like I didn't know like because of the pedigree that Connor Wegman has, I didn't know if Mike Elko was going to be able to make that move. I didn't know if he was going to make that move in a game of that magnitude, especially with, as talented as Marcel Reed is, he is extremely young. So like putting him in that environment, that is a risky decision. And I don't think we really talked about the inherent risk with making that decision. Obviously paid off, so hindsight being 2020, well worth it. But like, and in the moment, that is a risky decision. And the fact that he made that move, like you said, I agree. It is a program altering win over LSU because like, well, again, we'll talk about this, but all of Texas A&M's previous like biggest wins in program history, particularly modern program history, I think is the better way to say that, they haven't been of the same consequence. Like this was ostensibly a college football playoff playing game, and you went out there in the second half and you didn't just win, you didn't just eke it out, you dominated, and like that says a lot about the Aggies.
Yeah, this isn't like beating Alabama in 2012. This isn't like beating Alabama in 22. This isn't like beating the absolute snot out of Duke in the Peach Bowl in 2013. This has more consequences. That's the best way to probably say it.
Yeah, 100%. Who's your 10?
Indiana.
Oh, dude. Okay, so we're really in lockstep because I also have the Hoosiers at 10.
Yes. You've been higher on them a little bit more than me. I had them as the first team out last week. I just kind of feel that like they're showing that they can win in multiple ways. Again, I talked about the crazy interception I had to watch. I'm like, I can't believe the guy picked it off. Even with Curtis Rourke having, I don't know if he played or wasn't healthy or
No,
whatever.
no. He has a thumb injury. I think he
Yeah,
should like there's a chance he's back this week against Michigan State. So
yeah, and huge rivalry game for both schools. So like we'll see how that goes. But like he has his team playing with a ton of confidence. Again, it feels very much like TCU 2 years ago, where it's just like this thing's driving itself. And
mhm.
but I also feel that like Signetti is just firing people up more than Sonny Dykes, right? Sonny Dykes is just like, really good players coach when it's going well, but like when it's not, it's not. But yeah, I can't. I'm really struggling to see a world where Indiana doesn't make the playoff. I feel like if they get 11 wins, who cares what happens to Ohio State? Heck, they could beat Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State almost lost to Nebraska.
No, 100%. And like you're 100% right. Like I'm still not ruling out the possibility that Indiana beats Ohio State, but even if they do, like the rest of their schedule is relatively manageable. And so like
Yeah.
11 and 1 at like it I don't want to say at worst because some like things happen. It's college football. It's a team that hasn't been in that spot before, so like things can happen. I'm well aware of that. But the way
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, what I've seen from Indiana, it's hard to imagine anything worse than 11 and 1 at this point, which is going to get you into the playoff, especially like with some of the wins that they now have on the resume, like how they handled Nebraska, for instance.
Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what their fourth game is. So obviously they've got Ohio State, they've got Sparty this week, and then they end the year with Purdue. I think it's Michigan's the other one,
It's
right?
yeah, Michigan. It's between the Michigan State and Ohio State game. They played Michigan.
Okay, it's like for you bring up a perfect point. It's like we look at the Ohio State game, like they could lose to Sparty. That's not out of the realm of possibility. They're not losing to Purdue.
No,
So,
no, they're not losing to Purdue. Sorry,
and
Ryan Walters.
and I don't think they're gonna lose to Michigan. So maybe it all comes down to Sparty.
Yeah, it comes down to Sparty, and like we've talked about Sparty, like Jonathan Smith has his team playing hard. I again have nothing but high hopes for the future in East Lansing, but this team is imperfect right now. Like they shoot themselves in the foot pretty routinely, and if we talked about it on Saturday night, this is the maybe the best coach team in the entire country in Indiana. You can't be shooting yourself in the foot in a game against in a coaching matchup like that.
Yes, Michigan State's what? They're 4-4, I think. So okay, so they're kind of right where they need to be. They're fighting for
Yeah.
bowl eligibility. I mean, they had a tough loss versus Michigan, but again, it just seems like they just have more talent there in Ann Arbor than they do in East Lansing right now. They
Yep.
played well. That's a good loss. But interested to see who you have at 11, and I think it might be the same team.
I don't think it is actually
No.
because I
Oh,
have the Tennessee Volunteers in there.
okay.
And
Yes.
let me be clear with what I'm doing here. I do not think that Tennessee is a playoff caliber team. I would venture to say that of my first four out, I would take three of these teams over Tennessee into the playoff if it was just me. But based on resume, I don't see Tennessee losing a game outside of the Georgia game. And that's going to put you at 10 and 2, and I think that's going to be good enough to get you into the playoff. I don't like again when we get the 11-6 matchup, and if it's Ohio State Tennessee, Ohio State's going to beat the ever-loving piss out of them. Like I don't have confidence in Tennessee, but the way things are breaking for them, I just have more confidence in them getting it.
I think that's fair. I think it's like 10-2, like with what they've done. they'll get in. Arkansas has still been, I mean, Arkansas is going to win like 7, 8 games. Arkansas is
Yeah.
not bad because it's also you're looking at like the amount of available spots. Like right now, if we look at the SEC, like Georgia, Texas, and A&M are pretty much locks at this point to get in. Winner of Alabama LSU is still very much in it, and obviously Ole Miss has to beat Georgia, and then there's Tennessee, and that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
If it's Tennessee, may be the best bet to get the 4 spot, but
Yeah.
there's also a chance that LSU, Alabama may be the better team. It's a weird dichotomy.
Yeah, I'm not I have some thoughts on LSU Alabama that we will unpack as the week goes on. So
Yes,
we'll get there.
that's perfect. My 11 for me is Miami. I just feel
Okay.
like I'm like at this point, it's like, can I really degrade their a no start that much? And maybe a little bit, but like I don't know. I'm looking at some other teams, and I also we're just gonna say right now, we are going to be coming to you 3 hours to Cloud Upon after an ACC game this week with
That's right, baby.
Pitt SMU.
That's right. It's gonna be electric.
That was we looked at each other's eyes, we're like that's the game we're going to.
Obviously, you got to pony up. Let's go.
All right, who are your first 4 out?
So for first out is Miami. So like I'm with you. I think they're close. Again, we talked about it on Saturday night though. I think they lose a game in the regular season. And losing a game in the regular season for them, like this isn't to disparage anyone left on their schedule, but it will go down as a bad loss. Like it is not going to be a good loss because you don't play the upper echelon of the ACC to finish the season. So like I think you lose that game, then that puts you in danger of not playing for the ACC championship game, given what Pitt and SMU are doing right now. If you lose an ACC game, Miami might be left out of the ACC championship game at that point, especially against the teams that they have left on their schedule. And should that happen, I don't see a one-loss Miami team that didn't make the conference championship getting the benefit of the doubt over an SEC or a Big Ten team with a maybe not identical record, but similar record.
Yes. So my first one out is Tennessee. So like we're kind
Okay.
of we're kind of in the same sort of thing. But like with Miami, it's like I think SMU's got to play Pitt. Pitt's got to play SMU and Clemson. So if Pitt gets those wins, they're pretty much gonna go. Like,
Yeah,
and you gotta you
100%.
gotta who do you have at 14?
At 14, I have LSU.
Okay.
And that's a little preview of my thoughts about LSU Alabama because Alabama's name will not be said in this first 4 out. And so like I think that LSU they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar against Texas A&M. There's no denying that. Like they thought they could. They thought. Yeah, I mean, if they played the entire game against Connor Wegman, they're in the top 10 in the playoff field, pretty much a lock at this point. They got caught slipping against Marcel Reed. It happens. But I do think that when you put them up against Alabama, I don't think it's necessarily Marcel Reed's mobility that killed them. I think it was the mobility in relation to what Connor Wegman was doing. Like it was just a completely different look. You know what Jalen Miller was going to do. You know how to prepare for that. And so like I just think the defense is going to be better prepared in that instance.
So I'm on the other side of it. I've got Alabama at 14 with LSU already
Okay.
found. So it's not too far. 15. Who do you got?
I have Iowa State at 15. And I think that, again, we already mentioned it. Like, I think Iowa State is imperfect. I think Iowa State is a team that is good, not great, definitely not great. But, like, I don't think that they have enough opportunities. And with the Big 12 being what it is this season, I don't think they have enough opportunities to lose to put them completely out of the playoff race. Like, I think even if they lose a game, they're still going to be on, like, on the fringe of it the entire time.
I'm not all the way out on Iowa State. I'm still feeling pretty good, but my last two, 15's Pitt and then 16's Iowa State. That's where I'm at right
Okay.
now.
And 16 for me is Pitt. So we have the same two kind of right there. Like kind of like the teams we're keeping an eye on who might just crash the party. Like that's kind of the space that those two are occupying right now.
We actually got through this in pretty good time. Let's just
I know
recap
this
real
is the
quick and
quickest we've
move
ever done this, dude. What the hell?
on. All right, you recap your 12 and 4 out, and then I'll do the same and we'll move on.
All right. So one, I have Oregon. Two, I have Georgia. Three, Clemson. Four, BYU. Five, Texas. Six, Ohio State. Seven, Notre Dame. Eight, Penn State. Nine, Texas A&M. 10, Indiana. 11, Tennessee. And 12, of course, is Boise State. First 4 out, Miami, LSU, Iowa State, and the Pitt Panthers. Shouts to Nard Dog.
Scratch no dog. Yeah, too legit to pit. They're not going to pit this year. They might, but who cares? They had that was a big win there versus Syracuse. Just
Oh yeah.
destroyed them. It was
Unbelievable. This was brought to my attention, I believe, by Chip Patterson of CBS Sports. He said that after the game that apparently Pat Narduzzi was pissed because he was like, "Yeah, we couldn't get into an offensive rhythm because of all the pick sixes." And I was like, "That's the most backhanded compliment I've ever heard in my entire life."
like Eli Holstein threw for like 140 something, like aggressive yards. That's it.
It's incredible stuff.
Pitt's biggest win hurts his Heisman chances considerably.
Of course.
God, that's the most Nardole thing I've ever seen.
It's unbelievable stuff.
Yeah. So he's the type of guy that like when he gets carolers and they give him cookies, he just throws them in the trash like there's poison in here.
You don't know what they put in here.
And then he goes down to like Kroger, gets like the really awful cookies that people hate. He's like, these are the best.
What would that be? What kind of cookie are we talking here?
Just like the frosted ones on the top that people kind of they're not bad,
Oh,
but like
oh,
I
they're just
like
a
those.
sugar bomb. They're so
They're so
good.
good. He's like, these things are unhealthy. And then he gets these things. Like but anyway, here's a sugar bomb. Here we go. I'm gonna do it in like one breath, like I'm Dave Grohl singing Monkey Ranch. Got Oregon, Georgia, Clemson, BYU 1 through 4, Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Indiana, Miami, Boise State. My first four out are Tennessee, Alabama, Pittsburgh, Iowa State. Oh my God, I did it.
I can't be your monkey wrench. That was beautiful. I love it.
1 and 10.
1 and 10.
And 1 and 10. I think that's going to be the record of Houston by the end of the season. We're going to move on to you missed your mark. Oh my God. I was looking to try to round out this show, and I think just the BYU being in the top four now, it's kind of setting the tone of like we got to really unpack this. We didn't really do that so much with 3 yards in a cloud of punt, but I was looking at the standings on ESPN.com for what's going on here within the Big 12. The bottom like 5 or 6 teams in that league might be the worst of any in the Power Four. Like I just feel like the bottom of the Big 12 is really, really, really bad.
No, 100%. And like, to be clear, there are some surprises in this bottom 4 or 5 teams. Like the fact that Oklahoma State is the only winless team in the Big 12 play right now. Like I don't think any of us projected that coming into the year, even if we weren't like even if one of us wasn't particularly high on Oklahoma State. Like what the hell are we doing? Like you're not playing good football right now. Same with Utah. Like Utah is 1 and 4 in the conference. Like that's not what we expected from the Utes, although we did think, Black Smoke would be playing, but like yeah, in Arizona being another one, like in that category. Like Arizona has
Mm.
been a extremely flawed team. Noah Fafita has regressed a ton from what he was last year. Like it's not good for these teams down there. And like it goes back to the point of like, would I have Pitt ahead of K-State? Do I think Colorado can pass K? Do they need like can they get the loss from K-State that they need? You have Kansas sitting down here at 1 and 4 in the conference, and Kansas State literally went down to the wire and almost lost that game. And like when we're talking about the bottom of this league holding them back, I think it's twofold. One, you're not getting quality wins from this. Like there's no quality wins that are coming from beating the bad teams in the Big 12. You only have danger of that loss is losing to one of these teams is kneecapping. Losing to one of these teams is something that can absolutely like push you completely out of the playoff conversation.
You bring up a great point there. So I'm looking at this, and so of the ones who are like bottom, which I would say if you look at the standings, it's like Houston are worse. So like they're 2 and 3 in conference play. They're 3 and 5 overall. They're still better than what I thought they'd be. I thought that'd be a 2 and 10 team, but like I didn't think Arizona would be this bad. I didn't think Utah would fall in hard times. Didn't think Kansas was going to be this bad. Didn't see Oklahoma State being bad. And UCF, they just fired Ted Roof. Like they're like Gus is in some serious trouble right now.
Oh yeah, no people outside the bounce house are not bouncing right now.
And then you look slightly above those teams. So West Virginia, Baylor, I don't know if they play, but they're both 4 and 4. They're kind of it's like if you don't make a bowl, they're going to move on from Neil Brown or Dave Randa. But the chances of them making a bowl because they got to play this crap is pretty decent. Obviously, Cincinnati and Arizona State are trying to figure it out. And then you're like, next year, it's like, oh, do we really trust TCU and Texas Tech? I mean, after BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado, it drops off precipitously.
No, it really does. And to the point about TCU, let me just recap TCU's conference slate that they've had. They lost to UCF, one of these worst teams that we're already talking about. They lost to Houston, one of these worst teams that we're talking about. They beat Kansas, one of these worst teams that we're talking about. They beat Utah, one of these worst teams that we're talking about, and they beat Texas Tech, who is basically the exact same team that they are. So like
Yeah.
they have not they haven't done anything in the conference. That's what I'm getting.
I mean, like, who is the fifth best team in the league? I might say it's Arizona State. I feel like they're
That
play. Yeah.
I was gonna say Arizona State or Cincinnati. Like I think it's
Yeah.
between those two for me because I think Cincinnati, I don't think they have a ceiling that's particularly high, but I think they have a floor that is particularly high. Like they're the same team every honestly, Cincinnati, different style of football to be clear. Like this isn't an X's and O's comparison, but in terms of vibes wise, they remind me a lot of Georgia Tech. Whereas they know exactly who they are. They run out and they run the same game plan and like that game plan is good to beat some teams. It's not good enough to beat other teams.
Perfect example. Like at the start of the year, we both probably had like we need to keep our eye on Kenny Dillingham and Scott Satterfield potentially being out after year two. That's not happening. Like this,
Yeah.
and I kind of actually understand why Scott Satterfield left. I used to kind of feel like, an opportunist guy, but I'm like, it's like the ACC's change is changing now. There's opportunities to be had with the power void at the top of the Big 12 and Cincinnati. It's not they had some period of adjustment to go with their athletic
Yeah.
department, but like there's talent in Ohio. They can win there. It's like you want to play, you can play in a MAC school, or you can play with us in the Big 12, and you can benefit that way. But yeah, it's like the bottom part of the Big 12 is like it's going to drag this conference down to the point where it's going to hurt BYU or Iowa State considerably. Like they're both not going to get in.
No, no. I think the more I the more I think about it, the more I am circling back to the idea that both the ACC and Big 12 only get one team in because the bottom and like I think the ACC suffers from a similar problem. The bottoms of these conferences are so bad. Like you look at what Miami just did this past week. Like I'm faulting them for not beating Florida State worse, and they won by 22 points. But like coming into the season, that Florida State game was supposed to be a potential signature win. Like that was supposed to be a resume builder. Now the fact that you didn't win by more than 22 is something I'm holding against you. So like the bottom of the conference is hurting the ACC in the exact same way.
It is, but for whatever reason, I look at the bottom of the ACC and I don't feel it's as like just the sad. I don't know
It's
why.
less sad for sure. Yeah, it's definitely less sad because and I think a big reason for that outside of Florida State is you don't like a lot of the teams in the basement of the ACC right now are teams that you expected to be there. A Wake Forest of that teams of that
Stanford,
ilk.
yeah,
Stanford, yeah, like you expect those teams to be in the bottom of the conference. You don't expect the teams that are supposed to be resume builders like Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State, the bigger like when you based on history, when you look at the schedule, those are supposed to be the biggest games in your schedule. Now they're just like trap spots that could like absolutely kill your resume.
definitely. So I'm sitting there thinking about your point where you said like I only think the ACC and the Big 12 get one in. I think if I did the math right, so it's like ACC champion, Big 12 champion, uh, Group of Five champion Notre Dame. So that's four.
Hmm.
So that leaves you eight more. Seems to be like you're saying that it's going to be probably five SEC teams and three Big Ten, or maybe it's 4 and 4 at that point. It's like because
Hold
you're
on, let me
sitting
count. I can't count real well, so give me 1 second.
there count the countant.
Hold on, I'm dumb. I can't count right. I have 4 and 4. 4 and 4 is
Okay,
what I have.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like that's kind of what I go back to. It's so let's just say hypothetically you get two undefeated teams to both the Big 12 and the ACC championship. So in the Big 12, there's a pathway for it to be BYU and Iowa State because they don't play.
Right.
And then the ACC, I think you can do it. I think Pitt and Miami. is probably the most likely one for that to happen. Although, yeah, because Miami doesn't play any of these teams.
No, Miami doesn't play anyone good.
So, like in this situation, if they're both undefeated and all four of those teams are undefeated, like does like the 12-1 loser get in? That's gonna mess everything up, dude.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I think that it's really hard for us to sit here and say what would happen in there because like there's two minds that I think both make equal amounts of sense. Is the playoff committee going to basically be like, okay, if you were in the top 12 and you make a conference championship game, we're not going to dock you for losing your conference championship game? Is that the route they're going to go? Or are we going to go the route of, okay, that gives us the excuse to put a team that's going to, not to be cynical about it, but draw better ratings is going to get into the playoff over them. Like we don't know what the committee's approach for a 12 team playoff is going to be when it comes to this stuff. So it's really difficult to say at this current point.
Yes, it's like I feel the conference is relatively equally. I will say though, if push comes to shove, if there was going to be two teams getting in, the ACC would get over the Big 12 just because like
Oh yeah, I agree with that for
the
sure.
brands are bigger. And at that point, like if you're getting like two in a piece, Notre Dame and so half, so it's six, that's gonna put teams like LSU, Alabama, Tennessee, Indiana, Penn State on like that's gonna squeeze them out. And at the same time, like I get it, but if it's the first year of the playoff, you're missing out on huge opportunities there, like revenue wise. Like I don't know. I
So,
feel like I don't think they're gonna do that.
so I have an idea for us next Monday after what we see happen on the field, and well, a little more for our data sets, but especially with the first playoff rankings coming next Tuesday, and we'll obviously be coming to you live with the Goldilocks episode after that. What if we did like our bizarro world playoff brackets, like the most chaotic playoff brackets that are absolutely still in play?
That's good. We'll do that because like at that point, because we are gonna pivot this show a little bit next week. Like we won't like we could say our rankings, but maybe we'll probably save that more for like the show's gonna flip a little bit. So like we won't do word manuals, manual and playoffs. You kidding me? At the same time, like it'll be a little bit different. But Bizarro, we're also getting to the point of the year where you got to start breaking my brain again. I hope you realize that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And like this is kind of I feel like this is kind of the start to that. Like, okay, like what if instead of BYU in the fourth spot, we have Colorado there? What if Indiana just runs the table, goes 13-0, wins the Big Ten championship
And
game?
they get one.
Yeah, do they
Yeah.
get the one? Do they get the two? Like, where are we going with that? What if Texas A&M goes and runs the table, finishes 12-1, wins the SEC championship? Where are they seated? So like just kind of playing out all these chaos scenarios, and then like also looking at what the 5 through 12 is going to look like after that.
Then you do this. What if Texas meets Georgia in a rematch in Atlanta and they lose to Georgia for a second time? Do they still make it?
Yeah, 100%. So like there's a lot of chaos still that could be had.
A lot of chaos to be had, and keep our brains working and stuff with some do Hast or do Hast here. This is gonna do it. We're gonna send this around BYU a little bit. So Cody, do Hast or do Hast? Do you think BYU gets a top three seed in the college football playoff this year?
I'm gonna go Duhast with two S's. And this isn't to discredit BYU, but they are still not a perfect team. This defense had it played extremely well against UCF, especially because BYU like I picked UCF to win that game because despite what UCF and despite everything going on with Gus, BYU's really struggled stopping the run a lot this year. And that's what Gus wants to do pretty relentlessly. So like I thought BYU would have some trouble with that. Turns out they did not. They came up and they were ready for that matchup and they put together a really strong defensive performance, holding them to 24 points. And it felt worse than that, quite frankly, if you watch the game. So I do think BYU is a good team. And I think that they're well coached. Kalani Sitake's one of the most underrated coaches in college football, quite frankly. But I do think that this team is still very much in danger of slipping up. I think this team is still very much not perfect enough to separate them, not perfect enough to be able to separate themselves from Miami, Clemson, whoever the ACC champion is. Like it's just hard for me to see rankings or really just the voting public at large for the AP poll to or the college football playoff rankings either to value BYU above an ACC championship champion at this point. Even if they go undefeated and Clemson were to win and be the one loss conference champion, I still think Clemson would have the better resume.
It's really close, but I'm going to go do Haas two S's as well for I think three reasons. One, again, the helmet power is just better in the ACC.
Yeah.
So all things equal, they're going to put Clemson or Miami ahead of BYU for that three spot. Number two, you want to. It's almost like you want to. They're not. They don't want to say this, but like they kind of want to reward like the best, the better runner up between the SEC or the Big Ten, getting a much easier win there. Probably in the Fiesta Bowl, which I would think would be where they would go for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I would actually argue that Iowa State's way more likely to get a three seed than BYU because their gauntlet is a little bit more because they'd have to win like, you got to win Farmageddon and then you got to beat BYU. Like
Right.
that's impressive. And their route to 13-0 is a little bit more daunting than what the Cougars is. And then also it's at the same point though, the only way that I think BYU would get the three is if SMU won the ACC. And then that way
Okay.
they'd probably do that. But at that point, like throw helmets out the window. Who cares at this point?
No, 100%. Like if that happens, again, that goes back to the Bizarro World playoff bracket. Like that's what we're living in. That's the world we're living in if that happens for sure. But no, you bring up a good point about the Iowa State versus BYU resume. So here is the remaining schedule for Iowa State, and I'll give you the remaining schedule for BYU, and I want you to tell me which one's a little more daunting. So Texas Tech is off the bye, or sorry, so Iowa State is off the bye to play Texas Tech at home. Then they go on the road to Kansas. Okay, sure. Then they host Cincinnati. They play at Utah, which even if we think Utah's bad, you still got to go to Rice Eccles late in the season. Not a fun time. And then you finish with Farmageddon. Like that's a pretty daunting little finishing stretch there. Now let's go over to the BYU side of things and see what BYU has left. Okay, they have to go for the Holy War off of their bye in 2 weeks in Rice Eccles. So okay, I'll give you Rice Eccles again. But then you finish with Kansas coming to town, going to Arizona State, and hosting Houston.
Yeah.
Like that's such an easier path.
Yeah. I mean, you got to win Holy War and beat ASU and Tempe, but like it's much, much more challenge. It's not as challenging as what Iowa State's got to do. They still got to play Texas Tech. They still got to play Utah. They still got to play Kansas State. Yeah. So yeah, if Iowa State runs the gauntlet, they've got a much better shot than BYU just to further momentum. But again, BYU still has the head-to-head victory over SMU way back when, so that helps
Yeah,
them too.
it
But
does. It does.
yeah, and then I will say that with Colorado and all this, like the head-to-head loss to Nebraska is not helping them.
No, but it is. I mean, end of the day, not a conference game. Doesn't
No, it's
matter
not
in the
a.
Big 12 race.
And then K-State's one loss is just a beat down to BYU, so that hurts them too.
Yeah, they got absolutely destroyed in that game.
But yeah, I think we kind of on the same sort of thing there. It's just BYU needs a lot of help to get higher than the four seed.
Yeah.
And they could do it, but it's like I was trying to think like the bizarre world. Like imagine this, just to put this in your mind. So like our top four in that situation would be Indiana one, A&M two, BYU three, SMU four, and then I think your 12 would be Army or
Army.
Memphis.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
would love to see it. That'd be incredible.
And then it's like then you have to figure out like how does Texas not make it? Which
Yeah.
would be you'd have Georgia at like the eight or something ridiculous.
Yeah. It'd be beautiful. Absolutely beautiful stuff.
Oh, yeah. For like last year, like I'm not going to live in a world where I pick Iowa winning the Big Ten.
I truly, my God.
But we're not going to do that. We're going to move on to some good bowl here. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Texas A&M win over LSU. It might be their best win since they joined the SEC. Mike Elko's
Oh
got
yeah.
this thing in his bag. You're like, remember the comments like he doesn't care if he's fat in his shirt. He's out there thriving, brother.
Dude, he is. He's absolutely he's coaching with so much confidence for a first year head coach. And I think like first year head coach at a new job, excuse me. Obviously, he's been a head coach before, but I do think that like I wonder what this would have looked like had Mike Elko not had his Duke tenure. Because things went pretty well for Mike Elko at Duke relative to what Duke football traditionally is. And I think it gave Mike Elko a lot of confidence. Not saying he wasn't a self-assured man prior to that, working with Jimbo Fisher's staff, but like if it was a situation where he was still at A&M, Jimbo gets fired, would you get the same amount of buy-in, or like is it just like the perfect storm to make sure Texas A&M buys in?
It's a little bit of both, I think. I don't know.
Okay,
Maybe it is perfect storm, but like there's people there that he recruited or knew during recruitment that wanted to go to A&M and
right.
may have wanted to play there with him, just didn't work out. So correct me if I'm wrong, like he was the DC there for a little bit, but not forever. Like I
Yeah,
keep
I think
thinking
it was
like,
like 2 or 3 years. Like it
yeah,
wasn't a long time.
like John Chavis was like their DC for a long time. John, the cap, John Chavis, the cap,
Are you a cap?
cap.
4 seasons from 2018 to 2021.
Okay, so definitely uh at that point A&M was better. Like, and then he
Yeah,
left, and then he goes to Duke. Also, when he went to Duke, though, he was kind of dealing with like David Cutcliffe, essentially Mac Browning his program, but probably even worse. It was just like
yeah, it was worse for sure.
it was not there were not good times to be had there in Durham at all. It was
No.
and he goes in there and he kind of makes chicken salad out of chicken stuff and
Yep.
parlay back coming back to A&M. I don't know why. It just feels like he is not like trying to be overly Texas about everything. He's not wearing like a 10-gallon hat saying good bull all the time. He just goes out there, wins football games. And it's it's like it's like when I see Elko out there, I'm like, this is actually like a football team. This isn't some sort of like Harlem Globetrotters thing. It feels like it's just good football.
No, 100%. And I think like one of the things that really stands out to me with what Elko has been doing with Texas A&M, and I think the LSU game is also a good example of that, is like under Jimbo Fisher, and I'm not talking about like the last couple years of Jimbo Fisher, like when Jimbo Fisher like had Texas A&M in a pretty good spot is more what I'm talking about. It still felt like okay, the floor because of the talent that Jimbo was able to get to College Station, the floor was so extremely high. Like you weren't going to have just like a complete dud. They were going to be competitive, but they might not necessarily have the playbook or the plays or the big plays that you need in big moments to win the big games like they did against LSU. I don't feel that anymore under Mike Elko. I feel like, and obviously Mike Elko is a defensive guy. Yes, Colin Klein calling the offense, but at the same time, like it feels like there's so much mutual trust in the staff, and it's not Jimbo Fisher just throwing out a textbook worth of plays and being like, "Oh no, this is the one that'll work." It's not that anymore. It just feels like a Mike Elko's self-assuredness wearing his big man shirts out there that, might hug his curves a little bit. Like it feels like that emanates throughout the entire team though. Like I know that sounds silly, but like legitimately watching this Texas A&M team, it feels like that confidence is bleeds down through the entire roster right now.
I think so too. I'll compare it to another SEC team now. There's maybe it's not perfect, but like I feel they've kind of gotten to the same level of how I feel about Josh Heupel, Tennessee, where it's not like I don't feel like any big win they have is fluky. Like, beforehand under Butch Jones, he's like collapsing on the field with like Dobbs nail boot and everything like that. My mom was like, "Who is this bumbling idiot? What is he doing?" It's not like under Jimbo Fisher, I kind of felt it was very much look at me, look at this spectacle. Whereas Adams, like, yeah, we kicked your ass. See you next. We'll see you next year, brother.
We'll see when we come back around now.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Hey, bye.
Yeah, it's I hope we don't have the chaos scenario because like you want teams like this to make the playoff. I'm not
Oh yeah.
saying specifically A&M, but like a 10-2 team, 11-1 team that gets better as the season progresses. That's what you kind of want in there as opposed to somebody who's like navigating a soft schedule, kind of stumbles in. Like you
Yeah.
want somebody who's gearing up, got off a slow start and now they're ready to rock.
No, 100%. Like, just like, wish casting, I guess, like dream playoff matchups that I would love to see. Like, if we got an Ohio State, Texas A&M 8-9 game, that would be electric, dude. Like, that would be absolute good stuff because Ohio State would come in there peacocking, thinking that this is a Texas A&M team of old, except it's a Texas A&M team that can match a lot of their talent that Ohio State is going to boast, and I think is better coached than them. So, like, and maybe I do enjoy a little bit of Ohio State tears every now and then. So I think that'd be a good recipe for that.
Dude, they'd be peacocking in College Station, like a bunch of Kyles walking in there peacocking, thinking that's their field, and then they lose like 31-17.
100%, dude. Just like get beaten to submission.
That's what you want, though. You want like your 8, 9, 10 spots to be like they can beat anybody. Like
Yeah.
you kind of wonder like that you want those teams being capable of winning multiple playoff games because otherwise like it's just chalk and we don't necessarily want that. We think that the 5 and 6 can because they're going to be underseeded because of like the AQ stuff, but like you want like the other teams to be able to conceivably do that.
No, 100%. And like Texas A&M looks absolutely the part of that team. Like, is there any like looking at our playoff brackets that we just put forth? Is there any team that in the top 12 that you think Texas A&M can't beat on any given day? To me, there's not.
No, the only two teams that I think would have a Texas A&M would have a hard time beating is if Georgia or Oregon play their absolute A game. I don't
Yeah,
think that they could get
100%.
there, but other than that, I think that, and that doesn't mean that they can't beat Georgia or Oregon, but it's like I think Georgia and Oregon's highs can extend further than A&M's, but A&M's ceiling is high enough to beat anybody on on any day, pretty much.
No, 100%. And like to be clear, I'm not saying Texas A&M is better than all of
No,
these teams, but I do think that like exactly what you said, like any given day Texas A&M could like there's a world where Texas A&M could be a national champion. Like it's not out of the question.
this isn't like you say can Pitt beat Georgia or can Iowa State beat Oregon? The answer is no. Like
The
it's
answer is no, no.
but it's not like that. But you have to think about it, and when you have to think about it, it means it can happen.
That's right.
Are you ready to not think and just do with our last segment of the day?
Always, always.
Yes, we are gonna pour one out and we're gonna go bowling, 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 bowling. Got a few more teams to pour one out for, a few more teams to go bowling. I tried to remember them all the best I could. That was much harder than I expected. I gotta do a better job of this next week and being mentally prepared.
There we go.
So we are going to pour one out for one, two, I think like five teams. I'm going to pour one out for 5 teams today.
Is it not six? Are we? I think it's
One,
six.
two, three, four, five. Yes, I can't count. Yeah.
It's all good. This is not a counting podcast. We've made that very clear.
We got to start by pouring one out for Florida State.
Brother, this team, what are we doing, man? This is it's tough. Very fitting that it came with just an uncompetitive loss to Miami. Like, yeah, that's how you should go out Florida State with this season.
Dude, it's like they're worse than like what the 22 LA Rams. Just
I mean, here's the worst part is they're for sure going to beat North Carolina this week because Mac Brown cannot beat the Seminoles to save his life. He has you and I have as many wins against Florida State as Mac Brown does.
he's never beaten his alma mater once. That's
Yep.
unbelievable.
Yep. So congratulations on your second win, Seminoles. Hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy it like the dog poop, I guess.
Yeah, 100%.
This one's sad. We are going to pour one out for Mississippi State. Uh,
Uh-huh.
best one win team in the country.
100%, dude. Like, I think I said it last week that Mississippi State, they're not a good football team, but everything I'm seeing from them, whether it's Michael Van Buren Jr. or just Jeff Levy, what he's doing with basically the skeleton crew of a roster right now, it has me really high on what this Mississippi State program can be under Jeff Levy. Like, I think that he might be more of a force multiplier than I realized when he was hired because I was not particularly high on the hire when it happened.
No, it's like also he's definitely lost a little bit of weight since I've seen it.
Yeah, dude.
He's looking good. He's
It got away. I think the stress eating from working with Brent Venables was getting to him.
Yeah, he's just going to Starkville. There's not much to do except work out.
Yeah. He
But
spends all his free time hitting the weights, baby.
he just spite lifts. But I'm not ruling out them up winning the Egg Bowl. I think that could be a perfect storm, and that could be a very interesting way. Because if Ole Miss loses to Georgia, then if there's the Florida game, there's just a whole bunch of concerns about is Lane going to stay or go? Like it gets in your head. Maybe Levy's like, I'm here forever. I'm going to keep doing this until I'm dead, even though he goes to another job in 4 years. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's not the point. We don't care about that. No, 100%. Like you can't rule it out because I mean, there's a chance that Lane Kiffin spends that week looking for real estate in Gainesville more than he does working to coach the Egg Bowl.
I'm trying to find the right Tom Petty song for like looking for real estate in Gainesville. Even losers get lucky sometimes, I guess.
Oh my God.
Just pulled that out of nothing.
Love it. That's beautiful.
Whatever we do, Jalen, I don't think we done one for Tom Petty or the other Gainesville famous band Less Than Jake. So that's
Oh, for
possible.
sure. It's got to be
Ba,
done.
ba, 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 ba. And we got to pour one out for Southern Miss. That's a dark place right now. They fired Will Hall. This is a program that up until about since I guess Monken left had 8 losing seasons ever. Like this is a really good program. This is like
Yeah.
Brett Favre and Ray Guy played there, like legends of the sport, and they're completely directionless. They're playing in a league without any of their rivals. It's like you almost forget that they're even in FBS right now. I feel really bad for the Golden Eagles losing Frank Gore Jr., who was fun to the NFL or practice squad or wherever he's on now. I think he did play. You did mention that the other day.
No, he got in a game. It was cool to see. But yeah, I mean Southern Miss, it's not going well. Even with Frank Gore Jr., they still weren't a good football team. Um, I honestly think that they are one of kind of like the teams that we don't talk about enough being really hurt by conference realignment. I think a lot of these CUSA teams, frankly, are. I think CUSA is kind of problematic right now, if I'm being real honest with you. Like, there's not a lot of good football being played in that conference right now. And like you said, like rivals of Southern Miss have left for other conferences as part of G5 realignment. And like we've seen a lot of shuffling in the Conference USA. And CUSA has also been the league that's taking the majority of these FCS to FBS jumps that we've seen. So like they're in a really tricky spot to like try and like have any kind of viability. And it's also like, you mentioned Southern Miss, like they've had a really strong historically like good program, but that becomes harder and harder when your conference really doesn't mean anything anymore, especially in the transfer portal era. Because even if you do get a recruiting win by finding some diamond in the rough, a hidden gem, after 1 or 2 years, he's gone. So like
Who
you're
are
not getting to develop them in the program.
who are like their traditional rivals? It's like Tulane and Memphis is kind of what I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
thinking.
They're like basically the mid to top tier of the AAC is like their traditional rivals.
Tulane, Memphis, UAB, South
Yeah.
Alabama. Well, I guess they're trying to make South Alabama happen, like Fetch. It's just I don't know.
Quit trying to make fetch happen.
This one really hurts. We're gonna pour one out for Troy.
Yeah, I mean,
Did not
it's
see this. Did not see this going this badly for Jared Parker year one at all.
this badly, no. Like already not being eligible for a bowl, no, did not see that happening. I did think it was going to be tough because, like, not only are you losing John Summerall, who did a phenomenal job at Troy, no denying that, but you lose John Summerall, you lose a ton of talent that John Summerall developed, and not to the transfer portal, to, they graduated. Like, he spent a lot of time developing and keeping that Troy roster intact. And now that roster's gone. And on top of that, a lot of the remaining talent transferred away, whether that was to Tulane to follow John Summerall or to other places in the country. But Troy's roster was left in a bad spot. This offense has been almost unwatchable, which is unfortunate for Jared Parker.
Yeah, I know. It's like he's supposed to go in there and bring some juice. Like, oh, this could work. This is a good replacement for John Summerall. But at this point, like, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. I don't really know. Like, there's a lot of changes that are going on. But Troy just has such a high standard with Larry Pinckney, with Neil Brown, with
Yeah.
John Summerall now. It's just like that ain't it. And
No, it
I
ain't
don't know
it.
I don't know what it is for UTEP because they suck, but the Miners are 1-7 too.
Yeah, dude, talk about tough places to win. Like this, UTEP is close to like a Kent State level job at this point right
Yeah.
now. It's a You're the worst program in Texas in terms of FBS programs right now, and like that means you're just getting scraps. Like you're not getting a whole lot of anything, and like I also think that UTEP has been hurt by the Jerry Kill era at New Mexico State because those two
Yes.
programs are very close to one another. And like New Mexico State with Jerry Kill was winning a lot of those recruiting battles. Now you have New Mexico with Bronco Mendenhall, who we know is a fine recruiter, finding good players that might be diamonds in the rough. When we saw it at BYU, we saw it at Virginia, like we've seen it with Bronco Mendenhall routinely. So like UTEP is just consistently playing behind the eight ball right now, and I don't really see a path for them to get out of this spot that they're currently in.
Yes, I had to look this up. So you were absolutely right there with their regional rival with New Mexico State. You probably know the geography. I'm actually going to leave this on this because you can actually answer this. How far is Las Cruces from El Paso?
Like literally an hour, if not
Okay.
less. Like they're right next to each other.
Okay, cool. I was thinking it was like 3 hours. I'm like, no, that's about how far it is from like Las Cruces to Albuquerque is like 3 or 4. So,
Yeah, like
okay.
it's Las Cruces is right near the Mexico-Texas border, and then El Paso's on the other side of the border, right in the same
Yes.
spot. So like they are very, very close.
And I don't know really how well the Aggies have played this year, but like Tony Sanchez was promoted from within once Jerry Kill left. They've got a little bit of momentum. We'll see if that's sustainable. They're in a decent conference. I think they've taken advantage of Conference USA a little bit too, whereas I think UTEP's on the move to the Mountain West. They're just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, and maybe the move to the Mountain West will help them. I'm just getting accosted by the sun right now, in case I'm
Yeah,
sure you can see, but
yeah,
like UTEP moving to the Mountain West, maybe that will help them expand the recruiting base a little bit. Maybe it'll help them like get their eyes on more talent in the outside of the El Paso and New Mexico, Southern Texas region. But I don't like I'm not based on what I've seen from UTEP at this point, I'm not 100% confident in that. So who
yes.
knows?
And including the last team we're going to pour one out for, the Wyoming Cowboys. Outside of Florida State, every one of these teams is either as a new head coach or is about to with Southern Miss. So Jay Sawvell taking over internally at Wyoming. Not going great for the Cowboys, but we're going to see them again for HO's going to see them again because Lobo, which is Bulldog.
Lobo always. No, 100%. And like I will say I had eyes on because I'm a sick human being. I had eyes on Wyoming, Utah State. They played well. They actually probably should have won the game. And I thought Utah State would probably win by a lot in that one. So shouts to Wyoming for putting up a fight, but this is a bad football team, man. They're not good.
No, they are not. But these teams are good. I think we got a handful of teams that are have got to 6 wins. And you want me to make an ass of myself, or do you want to make an ass of yourself?
I'll take the bullet this time. So let's go for it.
Yes, the Alabama Crimson Tide are still technically alive, and they are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
Uh, the Boise State Broncos got a big win over UNLV, and they.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
James Madison Dukes may not be a playoff team, but they are.
Even without Coach Sig, they're bowling, 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 bowling.
I don't know if Ohio State's good, but they won. They beat Nebraska, and they.
Bowling, 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 bowling. I'm not giving them any emphasis.
They balling. I'm balling, 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 balling. Um, Ole Miss won the Nut Bowl, so that's cool. Two T's.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
First team to punch their ticket in there. Very crazy game back on Tuesday with the Sam Houston Bearcats with a K. They
Bowling, bowling, bowling with a K.
and John Summerall's new team, the Tulane Green Wave, who is still in the playoff mix, crazily enough, with halfway decent odds. The Greenies are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
This is so dumb. I'm glad we stumbled upon this. Uh,
Oh my God.
this was episode 121 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Yes, the hand beckons. Give us a 5-star review on Apple, please. If you say it's a 6-star review, we'll figure out some sort of starter package. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might be like a pack of double mint gum, but it'll be something.
The stick the starter package on Xfinity. It's something, I guess.
That's right. It's definitely a packet.
So make sure we got you guys on the same page. So for Thursday's episode, it is going to be Beetlejuice themed. It'll be Halloween, and we will dress up.
Yep, we'll be dressed up. I'm excited to see yours. It when we log on for pre-show, it'll be the first time that we've seen each other's costume.
I don't think either of us work on Thursday, so this is going to be great.
Oh, it's gonna be fantastic, dude.
And then so for Antonio, we are going to go to we're going to Albuquerque for Wyoming, New Mexico. And because of that, we decided that the jail in this week is going to be Bob Marley because that's Bronco Mendenhall's favorite band. I'll tell you what, another band that has very little depth with their lyrics. He's all about love and getting together and doing things, which was mostly marijuana cigarettes.
A lot of depth and very little at the same time. Like, he's talking about heavy things. He's not really unpacking them, but he's talking about them.
Let's get together and feel all right. And this is False Start.